Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. This week, you're going to be hearing from a special guest, Michelle Steingart. Man, this is such a wonderful conversation with a really great assistant principal friend who I've had some opportunities to coach in Palo Alto, California. So a shout out to all my friends there. But before we do that, we want to introduce this week's question of the week, which is going to be asked by another one of Jen Schwanke's college students from a class that I was invited to speak to. And as always, our question of the week is supported by Summer Pops Math Workbooks.Principals. When students practice math over the summer, math scores go up. What is your summer math plan this year? A great way to start is by ordering free summer workbook samples at summerpopsworkbooks.com.
Okay, so Steph Rush, you've got a question about workforce trends. Go ahead, introduce yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, I'm Steph Rush. I'm a middle school intervention specialist for students with more intensive educational needs. And I'm just curious that in your work as an educational consultant, what current trends in human capital management do you believe future principals need to be aware of?
What a great question. I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert in trends, but I will say some things that I have observed. Flexibility is, I think, something super important to the generation of educators coming into this work. And I think flexibility is super important in the workforce in general. And so, because my last stint before this work was working at a state principals association, and we had a staff, a small staff, we had about 13 people on our team. I noticed that as we were recruiting people out of college into the work, that the old fashioned, this is the begin time, this is the end time, this is when we do work, is not something that's shared among people. We're talking right now through laptops and computers sitting in our homes or sitting in your school buildings or wherever you are today, because we have flexibility now that we used to not have. And so I think as educators of students, we need to recognize the flexibility that we should be providing for them, but we also need to be able to do that with our staff. So even though I was a principal in the old days, there were times when I would recognize my teachers are tired and I have an important meeting I need to hold with them next week. But let me just put together a quick little video of me saying the things that need to be communicated in that meeting. I'm going to send out that link and then ask them to just sign something that said that they viewed it so that I know that they got that information back. Because the more we can model the kinds of flexibility that we want to experience ourselves, I think the better it is in recognizing. I'm not a generational trends expert, but I do read a lot about the differences between all of the areas, millennials and Gen Zers and what are we calling the news generation, the alphas. But it is, I think it's important for us to recognize. I employ now my oldest daughter to work for my organization, and Emily's 26. So the same age as many young teachers that are coming in. And because we communicate, I know she's doing her editing sometimes at 11:59 at night, because that's when I got the message that things were completed and uploaded or whatever. I'm asleep at 11:59 at night. But just recognizing that I've set up the standards for the work that I want to see accomplished, but I let her choose a lot of times the flexibility piece of what that's going to look like. I'll give you another example. We have daily meetings to just go over priorities that we're trying to manage for each day. And I give her the responsibility of setting the time. Let me know when you think we should meet that day, because she can look at my calendar and see when I'm free and when I'm available. But that puts the responsibility back on her to determine what time of day is best for her based on when I'm available. But so giving people ownership, I think, is important too. So I don't know if that's helpful, but when I just think that's important for leaders to keep in mind, because if we're not willing to, and I think the same thing happens with AI, we have to be willing to be learners and try things and let people take risks and do, even with, because if anybody ever gets the sense that as a leader, your expectation for them is toe the line and never do anything wrong, then they're going to smother to death. You wouldn't want a classroom like that, and you certainly wouldn't want to lead a school like that.
Yeah, nobody needs another mother or father treating them like they haven't got themselves figured out. And like my late great grandfather always said, everybody thinks the generation coming up is a disaster, and they're gonna mess it all up, and they never seem to. So that's something to keep in mind.
Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. Over 1 million teachers use IXL in their classrooms every day for one reason. They love it. Why? IXL is where the magic happens. With just one platform, teachers can personalize learning for every student. IXL gives teachers all the tools they need to enhance and differentiate instruction without adding work to their plates. Plus, IXL has decades of expertise and is proven to be effective. Studies on more than 70,000 schools across 45 states show that those who use IXL outperform others on state tests. Ready to bring the magic to your school? Visit IXL.com/PM to learn more.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Jen Schwanke, and I am here to tell you about a summer masterclass that will be held on June 3rd at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time that focuses on managing school conflict. Are you tired of school conflict throwing you off track, or wish you could turn those tense moments into opportunities for growth? If so, join our high-impact virtual session designed for principals, aspiring leaders, and teacher leaders. Get ready to ditch the avoidance and embrace the conflict head-on through a deep dive into understanding the types of conflict, mastering an anticipate, analyze, and act cycle, tackling common school conflicts, empowering others, and even confronting your own role in conflict. This session will be a dynamic, interactive experience providing practical tips you can use today. So transform your school culture and become a conflict resolution powerhouse. Register at williamdparker.com/guide and join me on June 3rd at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we will dive into some conflict. Thanks, everyone, and I hope to see you there.
You're listening to Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast.
Principal Matters Podcast, episode 450. Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. This week, we're going to be talking about instructional excellence with my special guest, Michelle Steingart. Michelle Steingart is a dynamic student-focused education leader with over 20 years of experience in secondary education, including roles as assistant principal, teacher leader, and classroom teacher. She has a proven record in fostering instructional excellence, cultivating collaborative relationships, driving school-wide initiatives that enhance academic achievement and equity and student well-being. As assistant principal at Palo Alto High School in Palo Alto, California, she is adept at leading large teams, managing complex programs, aligning operations with a strategic vision for high school success. And in her free time, she enjoys trying to talk with her teenage children and convincing them to spend time with her, reading as well as exercising, running, weightlifting to help keep her sane. And she enjoys finding sparks of joy in everyday life. She's also, I'm just going to tell folks, Michelle, a good colleague and friend. I've been able to work with you in masterminds and coaching, and it just brings me so much joy to bring you to the podcast. So welcome to Principal Matters Podcast. And why don't you fill in the blanks on that intro and tell listeners something else they may be surprised to know about you?
Oh, well, thank you, Will. You're so kind. We, of course, enjoy working with you to help us grow as a team, as well as to, improve our everyday operations here at Palo Alto. And we have grown in many different ways, and we have you to thank for that. I think that intro covers a lot and something that your viewers probably won't know about me, really anything about me, but what I'm going to share is that I'm a really active person, and I love anything to do with sports. And I was a hurdler sprinter in both high school and college, and I've enjoyed running longer distances since that time, just as a stress reliever and to keep me, like I said, or like you said, sane for everyday life and ready to start the day out. I'm currently training for a trail run half marathon to run with my brother, who just started running a few years ago. And it'll be the first one I've run since having kids, and my oldest kid is 18. So I can tell you running and training for a half marathon now is very different than when I was in my 20s.
Well, kudos. Oh, Michelle, there's so many directions we could go in this conversation, so it's hard for me to control all the thoughts. But I just a few more things about life outside of school. So you're a mom, you exercise like crazy, you're a learner, and but you also have a scooter. So I'm just gonna go there. Tell us like because that's a new thing too, and I think it's really cool how you figured out how to like maximize your time getting to and from school. So why would someone want to get a scooter? Because I think you're becoming a salesperson for scooters now.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you how it evolved for me, and then I'll tell you who's jumped on the bandwagon. My son's a senior, and he got his license last summer. Yay! And he attends Palo Alto, and so we get a carpool to school together, which I love more than he does. And I wanted to give him a little more independence in the afternoon, so that he can take the car, go to practice, not have to wait for us after practice. And so I started walking to the train, taking the train home. But as I was training for this half marathon and running more miles, my feet were just tired at the end of the day. And I thought, why don't I scooter to the train? And so I bought myself an electric scooter, and it was so fun. I shared it with my team, and I've now convinced a colleague to get a scooter and take the train too. And it's actually cut his commute down by half. And uh,
Yeah,
we've scootered to the train station together, and
I
that's really fun.
I just love that story so much. And because I've been to Palo Alto and I knew there was a train that ran by Stanford, but I never took it. And now I'm like, I can't wait to come back to like lodge someplace where that's closer to the train and stay off those crazy roads. So I now understand why Californians have every road memorized. And it's not because you guys just know roads because you like love trivia. It's because you do it for survival. Like that's how you know how much time you're going to spend driving every day. Okay, so enough about transportation.
Yep.
You and I spent a lot of time talking about the work of school leadership. And one of the reasons I brought you here, Michelle, and I'm just going to tell listeners that in some ways you were telling me, well, I'm not sure that I want to step into that interview chair. But I wanted you to step into this interview chair, Michelle, because and I'm not saying this to butter you up. I'm saying this for the advantage of our listeners. When I get to work with really high achieving leaders, and no one's perfect, but when I get to work with high achieving leaders and I get to admire how their practices are actually making their schools better, but also working in ways that could help other people, then I want to invite others into that conversation. And that's why I've invited you here. And there's a lot of different ways I've seen your strengths in the way you serve your school community. But the one area that I want to focus on first, and for the for the focus of this conversation, is how you've been able to, with all your responsibilities as an AP, because you do student discipline and you manage teams and you do all the things we mentioned in your bio. How do you prioritize and strategize for time in classrooms? Because you really have some very strong commitments about walkthroughs and observations. So talk to us about that. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a short answer to it is that, and some advice I have for others is that if it's important to you, schedule it. And I think other leaders and administrators can probably relate to their calendar filling up with meetings from other people pretty fast. And you could be in meetings from the time you step foot on campus to the time you leave, and sometimes even after that, depending on your responsibilities and what's going on in your district and school. And so what I find is by really blocking out time on my calendar to go out and visit classrooms, it makes it important, and it makes it something that other people don't schedule over because they see it's on there. So that's kind of a short answer to it. But then the longer answer to it is, so then what? It's on your calendar. You have all this other work to do. How do you continue to prioritize it? And it's it's one of those habits that you just got to form. If it's important for you to get in the classroom, making it a habit is going to be your first step. And for me, I have a background before coming into administration. I developed myself as a teacher coach for many years, and it's actually a direction I didn't expect going in, even though I probably should have, looking at my love for coaching, like coaching sports in the past, and working with my peers and helping them grow. But it's a strength that I brought with me into administration is coaching other teachers. And it's a craft that, doesn't just come overnight. It's something that takes a long time to develop. I'm still developing it. And it takes a lot of focus to help teachers develop their craft in a way that they're going to be most effective for their students. Going into classrooms for me is a way for me to build trust, not only with teachers and staff, but also with students. I'm not going into classrooms with the viewpoint of trying to catch teachers doing something wrong. I go into classrooms to build an understanding of that teacher's class environment, that teacher's craft. I love catching teachers doing great things. And luckily I work in a school in which that happens every day, and it happens every time I'm going into the classroom. But that trust building is a big one for me, and being visible in classrooms is part of building that trust with our staff and our teachers.
So I want to pause for a moment and come back to something you said earlier, because you've already dropped so many golden nuggets here, that your calendar will be full. I mean, it will be full. Someone is going to want to see you, going to want to talk to you. So blocking out that time in advance is so important to you. Your development as a coach of teachers, your commitments to being in classrooms to build the kinds of trust you need to be able to leverage that. But I was recently in a meeting, Michelle, with a room full of assistant principals, and they're all very committed, passionate leaders. And the topic of time management came up, and I made the comment that as a leader, it's really important that you're thinking. And at the time that I was talking to this group, this was spring semester, and so I was saying it's really important for you to begin to think about next year now. You should be planning out all of next year, including trying to prioritize the times you're going to be in classrooms. And they just burst out laughing. And I could just see like some of them just like, are you serious? So I paused and just said, okay, let's back up and talk about why I said that. And so I just want to bring that comment to you, Michelle, because I know what works for Will may not work for everyone, but what does that look like for you in practice of how do you block that time out so that you can actually prioritize being where you want to be?
That's a great question. And everyone's going to have to find their own way. Like you said, it's going to look different for every person. For me, there's a few different ways I've tried it. And I'm even this year, and we may get to that in this conversation, I've tweaked a number of the ways that I've gotten into the classroom just to find something that works best for me and the teachers, right? But let me back up to your question. In June, the year before the school year starts, I start working on my calendar. And so we get out at the end of May, start of June, we start up again early August. And so before I go on summer break, I put all the check-ins that I like to get in with the various hats I wear, places on campus I oversee, whether it's attendance or technology. I'm a liaison for a few of the different departments. So I'm kind of blocking all my time on my calendar to have check-ins with these individuals. And I'm also blocking out time I want to be in classrooms. And it's evolved for me blocking out entire 90-minute periods to be going through classrooms, to paring that down into this year. I'm trying more smaller chunks. So I might have on my calendar, I'll have 3 to 4 10 to 15 minute intervals in which I'm going into classrooms every day. And that's worked out really. I've always used the time and committed to using the time that I block out on my calendar. But I am liking this year those chunks of time going constantly throughout the day into classrooms, a little better than the 90-minute blocks of full time.
Well, I'm glad you said that, and it's going to look different for everyone. But I'm coming back to this because I think that sometimes in the moment we want to be in the places that we believe are going to be the place where we can make the most difference in classrooms. But to be in that moment requires an enormous amount of prep on the front end to
Mhm.
be able to protect your time so that you can do that. And so when I talk to leaders and I'm saying, you need to be planning your next year now, I'm not joking. There are things you need to be going ahead and chunking on that calendar in advance because they're going to happen anyway. You already know when start time, end times, teacher in services are going to be, games are going to be, all those kinds of things. But I love it that you added there the blocking times where you want to check in with the groups that you know are the most important for you to be connecting with, whether that's your PLCs or student groups or leadership groups or departments, but then blocking out that time that you want to be in classrooms in advance, even if you don't have all the details worked out, so that you can begin protecting it. Anything else you want to add to that before I follow up with another question?
Yeah, I think just working out those details. Uh, I do that a little more closer to the dates. So I block out the
Mhm.
times beforehand, and then usually the Friday before the next week, I'll reflect on the departments that I work with and kind of making sure that I'm continually walking through a variety of different classrooms. I'm not just targeting one or two classrooms, but I'm really looking at all the different teachers that I'm for the departments I'm working with, and kind of coordinating those details closer to the dates tends to work better for me.
So another follow-up question that I would have, Michelle, because I want to come back to the um, to your commitment to instructional excellence is more than just being there. Obviously, you want to build the trust so that you can leverage that for the kind of feedback you want to give to teachers. So, talk a little bit more about some of the other ideas that you would like to convey to leaders who have that same passion. They want to be able to develop this strength as a leader. What are some other lessons you've learned about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Something I learned as a teacher coach is observing with and giving information to teachers that is not opinionated, does not have my
Mm,
opinion in it, but has facts and data. And so really taking observations without adding my opinion. And that is something that I practiced over many years in order to feel really comfortable with it and in order for it to come a little more, to come very naturally to me at this point. What I have found about providing that that specific data and feedback about what I see happening, I find that teachers don't always notice all the things happening in the classroom that you might notice.
mm,
And there's a lot of great things that you might notice as an observer that the teacher has no idea that's going on, and their effect of whatever they're doing on their students. And so that really helps the teachers see from maybe the student's perspective or an outsider's perspective what's happening in their classrooms. And from that, what a lot of people like to call the third point, the data point, uh, I sparks conversations with teachers, and it helps me be able to ask them questions about their intentions in the classroom, about their craft, about the purposes of what they're doing, so that I can understand their thought process and then build from there.
mm.
And so coaching for me is having these conversations with staff members to build my understanding around what's happening, but also to ask them questions to help push their thinking about, is that what you were hoping to see? Are those the results you were expecting? And if they're not, okay, what would you want to do differently to get different results? And so it's
Wow.
sparking those conversations, it's building that trust, it's helping the teachers build their craft to best help students and their learning.
I love that. And I know that when that's you could give a lot of examples, I'm sure, of trying to give someone feedback based on facts, not opinion, so that you can then go deeper and talk about the intentions, their craft, the thought processes that go into their practices. Can you think of one example, Michelle? If you're stepping in a classroom and you're trying to think about how do I give that feedback that doesn't come across as opinion, but actually comes across in terms of like, this is just a factual observation. Well, can you give an example of what that might sound like?
Sure. When I go into classrooms, I will always write down what I see happening. From there, really depending on the relationship I've built with the teacher, I might give some praise of, oh, I saw the students really understood what was going on when this happened, and nice job, good setup. And some teachers I have a relationship with that I can ask a little harder, deeper question to them based on the data I see to help them think about next steps and how it came off. But usually I try to have follow-up conversations in person. I think they happen a little more organically. There's a lot that goes on that a teacher does to prepare for their class that as an observer, you have no idea. And so to really understand the intention of what you've seen, those in-person conversations are vital.
I love
I
that.
don't know if that,
No, 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 you did because what you're
okay.
saying is, yeah, Will, there's certain things that I could write down, Dad. I could share that with them. What I hear you saying is the most effective thing for you is to sit down and have that follow up conversation and then convey those things. This is what I've observed.
Yeah, and let me add on to that because I think maybe when people hear, oh, now she's having a follow-up conversation with everyone she's observing every day, and I'm in at least 3 or 4 classrooms a day, that's just not doable. So let me back up and say that these conversations don't formally have to be a scheduled sit down. Um, they can be in the hallway during a passing period. There's a lot of different times when these conversations can be held. And I don't have a in-person conversation every single time I'm walking through a classroom. That's not effective or an efficient use of time for anyone, right? So it's an important part of the observation process and getting into classrooms, but it's also only one part of it.
Hmm. Oh, we could go so much deeper, but I want to switch gears and because I'm watching our time and I want to respect yours, Michelle. But um, I have, as you know, listeners to this show who are veteran leaders, but I also have aspiring and newer leaders. And so you are an experienced leader and you've done this work for a long time and you're doing it effectively. And I've had the joy of walking your school and seeing the benefits of your leadership and the collective leadership of your admin team with your teachers and students. If you could talk to a newer leader that's getting ready to step into something, perhaps for them, it's going to be a new adventure. What are some things you would want them to just keep in mind as they're holding on to that desire to be an instructional leader, but also knowing they're going to be managing lots of things? So, what advice would you give, Michelle?
Yeah, so that I would say the first thing I'd recommend, advice I'd give is to listen to build understanding and empathy so that you can build trust with the community.
Mm.
And just personally speaking, my first year was during the pandemic when the only people on campus were um, the 5 administrators. And in learning a new position and trying to understand the departments for which I support and all the details, that was really hard. And it was really hard to build trust remotely. And I reflect back on the year sometimes wondering how we all got through it, but it took me probably a lot longer to build trust with everyone than it would have had we been all in person. And that kind of brings me to my next suggestion is to be visible. And there's so many ways to be visible. We tend to rely so much on email right now. I mean, for new leaders, your email accounts are going to blow up, and that's another thing you're going to have to figure out how to manage. And everyone manages a little differently, but you don't always have to email people back. There's sometimes people email you with real quick questions, and I find it really effective. And another way to continue to build trust is just to go to that person on campus and answer the question in person. And people sometimes are really surprised that you're coming out and just, touching base with them or picking up the phone to call. If you notice a parent or student or staff member are feeling really emotional in an email, picking up that phone to call goes a long way. Being out there during passing periods and walking around campus and just being visible is incredibly important. Another hard thing to do when you have so many meetings and a lot of things on your plate, but really important. And my last one is, and something that may be a little out of your control, but something important to keep an eye on is finding a team to work with uh, in which you support each other and that you can trust. I have been incredibly fortunate to be part of a, a great team that I trust, and we support each other. We can count on each other. And I know that's not the case everywhere. And that for me, those are three things to keep in mind as a new leader.
Wow, those are so good. Listening to understand and build that empathy for building trust, staying visible and present, and responding to people often in person, not always having to shoot that email, and building that team of trust because you always lead better together. I I want to ask you this question too, Michelle, and that is, you're a veteran educator, and so you've also been through all of us have been through the seasons where sometimes some years are better and some years are harder. But what would you say to that veteran leader who's listening and ways to stay motivated in this work for the long haul? Because you've had to find ways, I'm sure, to tap into that reservoir to stay present and purposeful in this work.
Absolutely. Yeah. The cycles for new teachers and veteran leaders are real, and they're cyclical. I personally strongly believe in taking care of oneself. And this looks different for everyone. For me, as I shared at the start, it includes exercise in the morning, putting my phone on silent early evening. My phone does not live in my bedroom. And there's a number of other little small things that I do in order to take care of myself. Because when I'm not taking care of myself, everything else, it's hard for me to take care of everything else. And another thing um, that I do is reminding myself of my larger goal. What is my purpose? What am I working towards? Why did I choose education? And kind of keeping that big long-term goal in mind, and then finding celebrations along the way. We work so hard, and we often focus on the things maybe we could have done better without celebrating the things we've done great along the way. And that goes back to something you mentioned in my bio, which is finding joy, finding those sparks of joy and in the everyday. Work is hard. The work is hard. It's always going to be there. It's always going to be hard. It's never going to be complete. And finding those sparks of joy are, for me, what keeps me going. And finally, I've worn a number of hats for a number of different reasons, but one of them is I like to challenge myself with something new and exciting. Um, and I find that's another thing that helps keep me going over the long haul.
Mm.
That was a lot. Sorry, Will.
No, I'm so glad you said that. They're all so valuable that taking care of your own health, making sure that you're like practical things, putting that phone away in the evening, reminding yourself of that larger goal, finding those moments of joy. And then I love the fact that you want to stay challenged. I'm a curious person. And if I find myself getting in a rut, it's usually because I've stopped looking for that next thing that's going to spark interest and keep me compelled to go. As we wrap up, Michelle, I'm just, because I'm curious, I want to ask you this before we go too. You know, everyone has a different why, or a different story of why education is the thing that they chose. So I'm curious, as we're closing, what is that narrative you tell yourself, or what is that thing you hold on to when it comes to showing up every day and doing this hard work?
Yeah, I knew I wanted to be in education since middle school.
Mm.
And I loved helping and supporting my peers and helping to build their confidence. And despite my parents really encouraging me to look at a variety of different careers, I hung on to education, and it's still my why today, which is supporting both the teachers and students on campus to build the confidence that they can do it. They can do whatever they set their minds to. And that's my why, working with our students and seeing them grow over the years.
Well, Michelle Steingart, if any listeners who are wanting to connect with another leader and borrow your ideas or collaborate around practices, thank you for the privilege of letting me pull you into this podcast. But I would love for you to just share how folks can stay connected with you or how they can find you at Palo Alto, and then any parting words of advice you want to leave with listeners.
Yeah, so listeners can find me on LinkedIn or my work email, which you can probably put in the notes, Will. And parting words, I'll emphasize it again. Find joy in what you do. It helps to keep things positive, and motivating and encouraging as you continue on your journey.
I love it. I'm going to tease you as we wrap up, Michelle, and that is that because I get to work with a lot of teams, and I can remember back to, because I met Brent, the principal of Palo Alto High School, during COVID when you guys were forming your team, and then he invited me to start meeting with you guys probably the year or two after that. I'm losing count now, but I remember being virtually in a room with you guys, and of course I've been with you guys physically. But I have to tease you, Michelle, because whenever I ask a question, you are one of the most thoughtful people that I work with in terms of because I have a teacher pause that's usually like 7 seconds long, and yours is usually 14 seconds. I mean, you're going to sit there and think. You're not going to answer that question until you have thought it through. And so I just have to tease Michelle. I don't know if anyone's ever told you that your teacher wait time is a long pause, because I think you like to know what you're going to say before you say it. So kudos, my friend.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's wonderful working with you, Will. And as I said at the start, I'm incredibly honored to be on your podcast, and hopefully it's helpful to some leaders out there.
Well, it will be. So leaders, if you want to stretch, if you want to grow, if you want to see yourself stepping into some practices that will keep the joy in your work, then rewind and listen back to some of the strategies that Michelle Steingart uses, or reach out to her and we will put her contact information in the show notes. But until next time, Michelle, thank you for all the work that you do serving Palo Alto and your school community. And Principal Matters listeners, thank you for doing what matters. And we'll talk to you again next week. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Principal Matters.